Number 10. Adisa. Adisa is a giant demon-eating demon in the religion and mythos of the Zuni people of the southwestern United States. He is a giant, several times larger than a normal human being. In one story, he is said to have long, wild gray hair and hands with skin so thick and gnarled that the knuckles appeared horned. In another tale, he is said to have chest hair as prickly as porcupine quills, immensely muscular arms covered in black and white scales, a scalp covered in bristly hair like a bison's mane, a mouth that stretched from ear to ear, and a wrinkled, swollen red face. Several stories agree that he had bulging eyes that did not blink, yellow tusks that protruded past his lips, and long talons. Adisa is depicted as having a number of unsavory behavioral traits. In addition to eating his fellow demons, he's also depicted as hungry for human flesh, and I'm so glad he didn't leave us out. He is also an inavert liar and is often depicted armed with weapons, so I wouldn't invite him into your life. Number 9. Dharmasan. You can summon Dharmasan by playing a little game mostly known by the name of the bath game. You must be in a bathtub, and while washing your hair, you must say Dharmasan fell down repeatedly until you finish. You will visualize a woman falling, her head hitting a rusty tap that impales her through her eye, after which she dies. The next day, it's said that the ghost of Dharmasan will follow. If you try to look directly at her, she will disappear. But if you keep glancing behind your right shoulder, you may get a glimpse of her. Her hair will be black and tangled, and she will have only one eye. She will attempt to get closer and closer to you as the day goes on. Should you spot her and find that she's too close for comfort, shout Tamar, that is stop, and run away. The idea is to put some distance between you and her, and do not allow her to catch you. When you catch her gaze, you can perform a chopping motion with your hand while shouting Kira in order to escape her and win the game, as long as it's done before midnight, that is. Failing to do so will grant her permission to enter your dreams, and that is, well, terrifying. Number 8. Flying heads. Flying heads are described as being ravenous spirits that are cursed with an insatiable hunger. They are generally described as resembling a human head with long dark hair, terrible eyes, and a large mouth filled with razor-sharp fangs. In some versions, the flying head has a pair of bat wings jutting from each side of its cheek and bird-like talons. In all instances, they're described as being larger in size than that of the tallest man and possessing a hide that no weapon can penetrate. According to native folklore, during an especially severe winter prior to European arrival, an unknown tribe in New York State was suffering a famine. The young men wished to move the tribe across the Great Lake to seek new opportunities, whilst the older men, believing the famine was a punishment for their crimes by the spirits, desired to stay and endure. Enraged by the old men's stubbornness, the young men ended their lives, decapitating the bodies and dropping their heads into the lake. However, one of the young men involved in the deaths became entangled in the pile of heads, falling into the lake and drowning. Then, after destroying those responsible for the deaths, the flying head began terrorizing other tribes. Number 7. Elevator Lady. You can summon the Elevator Lady by playing the elevator game / ritual. This one is as simple as going up and down between specific floors until a creepy lady enters the elevator with you. In this terrifying moment that she does appear, it's crucial that you do not acknowledge her. You just take the elevator up to the 10th floor. Then you'll have one chance to forfeit the ritual. If you want to proceed, simply step out of the elevator into an alternate dimension. The lady will ask you where you're going, but just ignore her. You may explore this world if you dare, and to get back to your original world, just repeat the steps you took to get to the alternate one, making sure to use the same elevator. Whatever you do though, do not speak or even look at her. If you do, she may decide to keep you for her own, and you don't want to know what happens then. Number 6. Windigo. A Windigo originates from the folklore of the Plains and Great Lake natives as well as some First Nations. It's based in and around the East Coast forests of Canada, the Great Plains region of the United States, and the Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada. Sometimes Windigos are described as exceptionally thin, with skulls and skeletons pushing through its ash-colored mummy-like skin. Other stories describe the Windigo as a well-fleshed giant who gets proportionately larger the more it eats. According to other legends, the Windigo has pointed or animal Wendigo-like ears with antlers or horns sprouting on its head. A Wendigo's eyes have been described as sunken or glowing like hot coals. Sharp and pointy teeth, extremely bad breath, and body odor are also often traits of a Wendigo. It is usually, but not always, endowed with powers such as superhuman strength and stamina that will allow it to stalk, overpower, and devour its victims. Wendigos are usually credited with exceptional eyesight, hearing, and senses of smell. They are said to move within the speed of the wind and have the ability to walk across deep snow or even over open water without sinking. It's said to invoke feelings of insatiable hunger/greed, the desire to eat other humans, and the propensity to end people's lives in those who fall under its influence.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have Zozo. Would this be a list of Ouija board demons without Zozo? Zozo seems to have not been around for very long, but he is powerful, and in fact, as we talk about him, he only gains strength. Zozo is a demon who, if summoned during a Ouija board experience, even if you close everything properly and say goodbye as you should, you'll still be able to feel his presence lingering around for quite some time afterward. Many people have recounted their stories with Zozo, and while he is a demon, he acts like a poltergeist and has attempted to harm people, or at the very least has been known to throw furniture and other possessions around. These are only a few of the reasons why, if you find that you've summoned Zozo, it's imperative you close the Ouija board properly and then also probably burn it after too, just to be safe, you know? In our number 9 spot today we have the Donovan family. In the early 1970s, famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were called to the home of the Donovan family, and when they arrived they found them all terrified. They witnessed loud pounding and other inhuman noises coming from inside of the walls, the wallpaper was peeling, and the water was running red. The Warrens began their investigation, and this included asking them questions to try and find out if there was a source of the haunting, such as a recently passed away family member or some kind of new secondhand item. Through this questioning, it was revealed that one member of the family had used a Ouija board and ended up contacting someone who had died in the neighborhood 10 years earlier. The Warrens knew it was time for them to call a priest because they believed that the entity that had been reached through the Ouija board was actually a demon just posing as the person who had passed away. Following an exorcism, it is said that things in the home slowly returned to normal, but the events stayed with the entire family. One member who witnessed the hauntings and the exorcism said, quote, "I nor anyone else in my family have ever before witnessed anything so weird and terrifying." In our number 8 spot today we have Asiel. Asiel is one of the electors of hell and is monitored by the archangel Raphael. Asiel is one of the 7 planetary demons, as he is the demon of Saturn. He dwells in the bowels of Earth and can be summoned by being invoked 3 times, but he will only appear in a magical circle that has been prepared specifically for him. His appearance is basically that of a tall, buff demon with reddish-brown skin. He has 4 horns on each side of his head and has creepy yellow eyes. He does have a human form in which he appears as a handsome man, but only stands around 3 feet tall in this form. He believes in the superiority of demons to ordinary beings, and he holds a lot of anger towards any kind of deity. He does have the power to make those who summon him rich, and the good news is that he doesn't have a lot of disdain for humans, but the catch is as long as you don't worship any kind of god. Asiel shows great respects for both Lilith and Lucifer, as he believes that the gods don't do anything other than sit and watch as people struggle in sin. So I guess with him, as long as you are not a god, you're probably safe, but I wouldn't risk summoning him, just in case. In our number 7 spot today we have Naki. The Naki is a demonic jinn that originated in Estonian, Finnish, and Swedish mythology. She sometimes appears as a floating tree trunk, a large black horse, a hound, a silvery fish, a beautiful woman, or an ugly fisherman. With all these shapes and forms, it's no wonder people say that they aren't really sure what she actually looks like. She lives in the water, and she waits until some unsuspecting person catches their reflection in it, and that is when she strikes, pulling them into the waters below. It is said that her favorite places to make her home are in under bridges that cross rivers, docks, or piers, or in murky pools and wells. The good thing is that there are ways to ward off her evil, and that is by either reciting a magical spell 3 times before entering the water, wearing a charm made of iron, or by keeping a knife near you in the water. I think that last one is probably the least ideal of all of the options if you have the choice though. In our number 6 spot today we have Beesel Buub. Beesel Buub is a former seraph who turned into a high-ranking demon. He is one of the princes of hell and also oversees the Order of the Fly. He, Satan, and Lucifer form the triarchy of hell, which makes him one of the supreme monarchs of the underworld. As a seraphim, he was under the archangel Gabriel, but he was one of the very first angels to fall. Beesel Buub is often confused with Satan, and while the two names can technically be interchanged, they are two separate entities, and in some writings, they even disagree. Beesel Buub is associated with pride and gluttony, and he has also been held responsible for demonic possessions throughout the years. Unfortunately, flies are a very important thing for him, as it is said that he can take the form of flies. Now, his main job is to rule over the fallen angels as well as all the demons that are originally from hell.
Number 10. The Violinist. It's been long said that successful artists have made a deal with the devil, and this has been going on for hundreds of years. An Italian violinist named Giuseppe Tartini claimed the devil appeared to him in a dream and played for him the most incredible piece of music he had ever heard. Here is how he described the experience. One night in the year 1713, I dreamed I had made a pact with the devil for my soul. Everything went as I wished. My new servant anticipated my every desire. Among other things, I gave him my violin to see if he could play. How great was my astonishment on hearing a sonata so wonderful and so beautiful, played with such great art and intelligence as I had ever even conceived in my boldest flights of fantasy. Upon waking, Giuseppe tried to recreate it, and that became his magnum opus, known as the Devil's Trill Sonata. Number 9. Exorcism Gone Wrong. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome, and he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit, and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation." The man fixed him with a glare, snarled, and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. The father mostly used prayers as his weapon, reciting verses of liberation from the Roman rite of exorcism. As Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave the host, it eventually left, but my goodness, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 8. Witch Trials. Sarah Good was one of the first 3 women to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, which occurred in 1692 in Massachusetts. On March 25th, 1692, Sarah was tried for witchcraft, and when she was brought in, the accusers immediately began to rock back and forth and moan, seemingly in response to Sarah's presence. Later in the trial, one of the accusers fell into a fit. Now, Sarah denied the allegations against her, but another woman on trial admitted to being the devil's servant. She stated that a tall man dressed in all black came to them, demanding they sign their names in a great book. Although initially refusing, she eventually wrote her name after Sarah, and another woman forced her to. When Sarah was allowed the chance to defend herself in front of the 12 jurors in the Salem Village Meeting House, she argued her innocence, proclaiming that the other 2 were the real witches. In the end, however, Sarah was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to death. So, did she really meet the devil, or was she innocent? Who knows? Number 7. Strayed from the Path. This is the testimony of Jennifer Perez, who was brought up in a Christian home. She strayed from that path, got into drugs, died, and was sent to hell. Fortunately, she was given a second chance, but this is her story. She was in the hospital and her spirit woke up, but her body didn't. As a spirit, 2 men dressed in red approached her and told her to come with them. She went to heaven and saw the Lord and 2 angels, Gabriel and Michael. She and Gabriel went through a black door, and it was dark and they were falling. The farther they fell, the hotter it was, and she said it smelled like sulfur. They got to the bottom and she realized that she was in hell, seeing people being tortured by various demons. The cries and torture scared her, and then she saw a massive red creature in the middle of it all, just watching everything. She assumed that this was the devil, and it terrified her. After this, she then ascended back to heaven and was asked for a second chance. She then woke up in the hospital, alive, and devoted the rest of her life to God. Number 6. Mom met the devil. A user on Reddit posted this story about the time their mother met the devil. They said, "My mom told me a story of when she met the devil. She was in high school, she had a friend who was dating an older man. He was probably 20 to 30 years older than her, and he gave her a necklace. Not wanting to get caught by her parents, she gave the necklace to my mom. She wore it, and that night when my mom slept, she dreamt of a man. Clean cut and handsome, but disturbingly evil. She said all she knew about the man was that he was pure evil. He came up to her face, eyes locked on her, stone cold and expressionless, reached for her neck and grabbed the necklace from her neck and twirled it in a circle in the air like a witch's pendant. She jolted awake and couldn't feel the necklace, and in a panic she looked all around for the necklace and found it under her pillow in a perfect spiral."
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Ariana Grande. This is a terrifying paranormal encounter had by the super sweet Ariana Grande. Back in the Yours Truly era for the star, while in Kansas City, she and some friends took a visit to Stull Cemetery, which legend claims is one of the gates to hell on earth. This turned out to be a more haunting visit than the group had bargained for, however, as the singer recounted that suddenly they, quote, "felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur, which is the sign of a demon, and there was a fly in the car randomly, which is another sign of a demon. I rolled down the window before we left and said, 'We apologize, we didn't mean to disrupt your peace.'" Things only got more spooky for Ari though when she later tried to send her manager a picture of the cemetery. This photo she attempted to send came back with an error saying that the file couldn't be sent due to the fact that it was 666 megabytes. In our number 9 spot today we have Miley Cyrus. In an interview with LUK, Miley Cyrus opened up about a haunted apartment that she and her family stayed in during her 2009 European tour. She said, quote, "It was seriously so terrifying. It used to be an old bakery and they turned it into an apartment building, and I was having really crazy dreams and really scary things, and one night my little sister, it sounds crazy to tell you, but she was standing in the shower and all of a sudden I hear her scream. I run in there and the water had somehow flipped to hot, but it wasn't like the water had just changed, the knob had turned, but she hadn't turned it and it was burning her. She was really red." She continued on with the chilling tale by saying, quote, "Before I felt this, I thought I had seen a little boy sitting on the sink watching me take a shower, so I felt really freaked out. I was sitting there the next night, and maybe I'm crazy, but I could have sworn I could see this little boy sitting there on the sink caking his feet. My mom was getting mad that we were looking into it because she thought it was going to scare Noah, so then my aunt, who we hadn't told about this, comes in and she starts freaking out. She's like, I have no idea what happened, but I left the apartment and I came back and all of the doors and windows were open. I locked the apartment." She finished off her creepy story by saying that there were a few more strange things that happened, and this all was enough for her to swear off ever staying in that place again. Miley believes the haunting ties back into the history of the building and says that the apparition she saw matches up with who once lived there. In our number 8 spot today we have Adele. The haunting story of Adele starts off when she decided that she had had enough of fans and paparazzi outside of her London home, so she decided to purchase and move to a new home in Sussex. This house, in its past life before housing the Grammy Award winner, is said to have been a convent. Despite the change, Adele continued to be visited by people she didn't want in her home, but this time the visitors were otherworldly. The singer claimed that she began to hear noises that she was unable to find the source of. Things in her home also began to fall for seemingly no apparent reason, and apparently these paranormal encounters made Adele so unsettled that she had to hire a bodyguard to stay in her house full time. Hopefully these plaguing hauntings have since stopped, but only Adele knows for sure. In our number 7 spot today we have Ozzy Osbourne. One of the most famous rock stars ever, Ozzy has long been connected to the occult. I mean, Ozzy, Prince of Darkness, didn't just come from nowhere. Aside from the rumors, however, Ozzy has been fairly open about his personal connection to the devil. In a 1984 issue of Hit Parader, Ozzy said, quote, "I really wish I knew why I've done some of the things I've done over the years. Sometimes I think that I'm possessed by some outside spirit. A few years ago, I was convinced of that. I thought I truly was possessed by the devil. I remember sitting through The Exorcist a dozen times, saying to myself, yeah, I can relate to that." He even has expressed confusion over whether or not if he's a medium for some kind of outside source or if something much more sinister is at play. When speaking of actually selling his soul, Ozzy had some less than comforting things to say. He said, quote, "I already have. Well, you sell your soul to the devil when you do something yourself that you shouldn't, and I already have. I've lived my life to the fullest. If there's an afterlife, I've got a good spot in the furnace. You know? In our number 6 spot today we have Post Malone. Good old Posty has probably one of the most famous celebrity haunting stories, and it all started with a visit to ghost hunter Zach Bagans' museum. Within the museum was an old wine box that is said to hold a Dybbuk, which in Jewish mythology is a malicious demon. This box had come to the museum after the previous owner bought it on eBay and had some really horrible things happen to him and his family afterwards. These included reports of him having really horrific nightmares, and this extended to anyone else who touched the box, and sometimes even those who had just been around it. Even worse, his own mother had a serious medical emergency after he had given this box to her. This is all to say the haunted item showed up in the Bagan Museum, and then 2018 rolled around and Post Malone decided to take a haunting tour of the occult collection. During this tour, Post Malone reached out and touched the box, and, well, he has been dealing with the consequences ever since. These are said to include the same horrific nightmares detailed by the box's previous owner.
Number 10. Legion. Jesus encounters a possessed man and calls on the demon to emerge, demanding to know its name, which is an important element of traditional exorcism practice. He finds the man is possessed by a multitude of demons who give the collective name of Legion. So, yeah, this demon is made of countless evil spirits able to incarnate into a physical body or separate into their respective forms at will. While the types of demons that make up Legion is unknown, they are said to be the same kind of demon that would inhabit a host and would have a single hive mind. Speaking of which, the demons of Legion do act like a hive mind, always speaking in unison and always knowing what the other demon is thinking and preparing to do. Legion appears as a floating sphere that is protected by an outer shell composed of massive innumerable humanoid bodies. This enormous lump of flesh conceals an inner core whose identity can vary. Legion, when possessing a human body, begins to torture the psychological person, making them have depressive and negative thoughts to erase any desire of life from its hosts. Their attitude of possessing human bodies is seen as a horrible act to most angels, as it deprives humans of their only weapon, free will. Number 9. Furfur. Furfur, also known as Furcifer, is a demon who is said to be the Count of Hell, leading 26 legions. He speaks in a hoarse voice, has a fiery tail, and usually appears as a stag. He is said to be able to make men and women fall in love, and also has command over great storms. He gives true answers to all things past, present, and future, but he must first be commanded to enter a magic triangle, for if not, he will lie and deceive the conjurer. But if he enters the triangle, he will answer truly and gladly speak about divinity, the creation of the world, himself, and other fallen angels. He can also destroy all the conjurer's enemies by burning them up. And if the magician requests it, he will not suffer temptations from any spirit or in any form. Furfur can also supposedly be called upon when a mortal wishes to take vengeance on other demons. This is likely included in his capability to destroy the conjurer's enemies. And I just gotta say, how scary can a demon be if its name is literally Furfur? It sounds like a name someone would give their cat. Number 8. Beesel Buub. Beesel Buub is a former Surfian turned into high-ranking demon who is considered one of the 7 princes of hell and oversees the Order of the Fly. In Catholic demonology, he is sometimes considered to be one of the first 3 angels to fall from heaven, along with Lucifer and Leviathan. He is also often confused with Satan, and the 2 names can be interchanged. However, strictly speaking, they are 2 separate entities. Beesel Buub is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer and is one of the most loyal. He is commonly described as placed high in the hierarchy of hell and is seen as being associated with envy. He is also the prince of false gods, and flies play a large focus in imagery detailing him. The malignant spirit can even take the form of flies, according to some. I mean, ever heard of Lord of the Flies? Yup, that's him. Number 7. Mammon. Mammon in the New Testament of the Bible is commonly thought to mean money, material wealth, or an entity that promises wealth and is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. After the rebellion in heaven, Mammon was banished to hell, where he is the one who finds underground precious metals that his demonic companions used to build their capital city, Pandemonium, by Lucifer's order. Mammon counsels the devils to be happy with what they've got and to create a home for themselves in hell. He is one of the 7 princes angels of hell, each representing the 7 deadly sins. Mammon represents greed and is known as the treasurer of hell, and was said to have had dealings with the Greek deity Zeus. It is thought that when you make a deal with the devil for wealth and fame, you are making it with Mammon. Number 6. Belphegor. Belphegor is a demon lord that presides over the sin of sloth and is one of the 7 princes that rules hell. He also assists people to make discoveries. For example, he seduces people by suggesting to them ingenious inventions that will make them rich and they wouldn't have to work hard for it. As one of the fallen angels, Belphegor was originally a member of the Order of the Principalities, and after his fall, he became a demonic counterpart to one of the 10 Sephiroth that oversee the Tree of Life. He is the biblical enemy of the 6 Sephiroth, the patron angel of beauty. It's said that if Belphegor were to become too influential in the world, then the beauty of it all would become tainted, causing ruination.
And we're kicking off the list with Baal. Baal is a figure you'll find in books about demons like the Lesser Key of Solomon, a book about demons written by someone who didn't want their name on it. Baal is a pretty scary demon, though I'm not sure if there are any demons that aren't scary. What sets Baal apart is that he's supposedly in charge of a whopping 66 legions of demons. So if you ever manage to summon this guy, you'd probably end up with a whole army of other demons to deal with as well. Besides his demon posse, this one's got some powers of his own. His main thing is invisibility. He can also make other folks invisible. As for what Baal looks like, that's a bit of a mixed bag. This guy is hard to pin down, even without the whole invisibility thing, which makes him even scarier. He's said to transform into a cat, a toad, a man. Sometimes he's even depicted as a mix of all 3. Now we're heading over to Bali to discuss the Liak. These are not naturally born demons. They started out as normal human beings who had their souls corrupted by black magic, transforming them into these terrifying. During the daytime, they look human, but when night falls, they take on their true form, a large head with bulging eyes and long fangs. I say head because their head becomes separated from their body, floating around in the air with their entrails hanging out below. I've talked about the Liak a couple times. I just find them so creepy and cool. You can find these creatures hanging out around graveyards where they enjoy feeding on corpses, but their primary target, pregnant women. They like sucking the blood from unborn younglings. I think I'll take Satan over that any day, although I'm not a pregnant woman, in case you haven't noticed, so I'd probably be fine, but it's something I'd prefer not to witness. You know, you don't have to have something bad happen to you to know that it isn't ideal. Number 8, Krampus. Dealing with a demon would be a miserable experience at any point in the year, but Christmas, I gotta deal with the horned goat devil during the most magical time of the year. That is sad and unfair. Everyone's heard of Krampus. If Santa is Batman, then Krampus is the Joker, the anti-Santa, arriving to spread punishment to those on the naughty list every holiday season. Some young ones might get away relatively unscathed, a slap on the wrist, if you will, in the form of a beating from a demonic goat creature, but, you know, better than the next option. Those who are particularly crappy throughout the year might just be taken away forever, thrown into Krampus's basket and whisked away before being drowned. Now, on the positive side, if the brat was bad enough where being kidnapped by a magical monster and drowned to death was a fitting enough punishment, then they probably deserved it, and the parents would probably be relieved to see them go. Next on the list we have the Yukiona. In Japanese folklore, the Yukiona, which translates to snow woman, is a type of yokai, a chilling character often depicted as a vengeful spirit associated with winter and snowstorms. She is said to appear on cold, snowy nights dressed in a white. She's also said to be incredibly beautiful. She mainly targets travelers or lost souls in remote, snow-covered areas. Yukiona typically approaches her victims silently and without warning, sucking out their life force with her icy cold breath, leaving them as frozen statues. Some versions portray her as a malevolent spirit who takes pleasure in causing harm to humans. Others show her to have a bit more of a sympathetic side, depicting her as a woman who died in the snow and is now bound to the winter landscape. And in these stories, she may spare those who show some kindness or even fall in love with some of her victims and set them free. All I know is that I hate winter, and the last thing I would want if I were lost in the Japanese Alps would be getting tricked into being frozen by a sexy ice spirit. And at number 6, we have Pachas. In Hindu and Buddhist mythology, you've got these creatures called Pachas. They're all about darkness, death, and hanging out in the underworld. Basically, they're the embodiment of evil itself. These guys like to go after the living, and like most demons, they clock in for work around nightfall. They have terrifying powers in their arsenal. We're talking shape-shifting, they can change form to mess with your head, and invisibility. So you've got to be on your guard, especially when the moon's out, because that's prime time for these underworld bad boys to come out and cause some. In a nutshell, Pachas are the real deal when it comes to supernatural troublemakers. Darkness, death, and possession are their specialty. Stick to the daylight hours and keep an eye out for any shape-shifting, invisible creatures lurking around. Not that you can really keep your eye out for either of those things, so I guess you're screwed. At our number 5 spot is the Jinn. These entities are known to enter a victim's room, suddenly pouncing on them and pressing down with all their weight, rendering the person completely immobile. To make matters worse, they often attempt to strangle their helpless victims. Getting rid of a jinn isn't a walk in the park. The solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities. But there are variations of the story that depict the jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, the solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities. But there are variations of the story that depict the jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, if you manage to seize the hat from the creature, you gain control over it. But attempting to snatch a hat from a supernatural being doesn't sound like the safest bet, and there's little evidence of this ever working. Phenomenon of sleep paralysis is unsettling, and that this is definitely kind of an attempt at an explanation for that. Anyway, the jinn often associated with these nightmarish experiences in Turkish folklore. Next on the list we have Amit. Now, while she's not a demon in the traditional sense, she is a figure in Egyptian mythology associated with the afterlife, and what this entity does is pretty horrific. Amit, translated to devourer of the dead, is depicted as a fearsome creature with a combination of animal features: the head of a crocodile, the front legs of a lion, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus, the 3 most prominent man-eating animals that were known to ancient Egyptians. Amit's role is judgment of the dead, particularly during the weighing of the heart ceremony. In the afterlife, the hearts of the deceased were weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. If a person's heart was found to be heavier than the feather, it indicated a life filled with wrongdoing and sin, and this is where Amit came into play. She stood by, ready to devour those deemed unworthy. If your heart was consumed by her, it meant eternal damnation, with your soul ceasing to exist for eternity. I'm gonna guess that the possibility of dying and then being met with a crocodile, hippo, lion monster who may eat you whole probably motivated a number of people to try not to be pricks during their lifetime. Number 3, Lamashtu. Lamashtu comes from Mesopotamian mythology. She's a demon goddess often depicted with a lion's head and donkey-like teeth, the bird-like feet, and a tangled mess of hair. Lamashtu's primary claim to infamy is her malevolent activities with, again, pregnant women and infants as her prime targets. She's known to prowl around, lurking for opportunities to wreak havoc. This includes abducting newborns and committing gruesome acts like sucking their blood, or even nursing them herself sometimes, which is also an unsettling image. Her reign of terror doesn't stop there, though. She's also associated with bringing diseases, causing nightmares, polluting water, all great stuff, just causing general misery wherever she goes. In ancient Mesopotamia, Lamashtu was anything but popular, and people went to great lengths to protect themselves from her evil. They crafted amulets and chanted incantations to safeguard mothers and their babies from falling victim to her. And at number 2, we have Papa Bawa. This is an interesting one because it's actually a demonic creature that people have reported encounters with in relatively recent years. It's kind of in that cryptid territory. This demonic entity originates from the Tanzanian island of Pemba. Encounters with this being have been documented as far back as 1965, but it was in 1995 that reports of its activities gained more widespread attention. So, what exactly is the Bawa? Describing its appearance isn't super straightforward, as it's said to take on a number of forms. It can resemble a bat, a human, or a winged. It's some kind of combination of a winged creature, sometimes with a single eye positioned in the center of its head. The creature is notorious for targeting men, often attacking them during the night. But it doesn't stop at physical attacks. It's also said to have the ability to possess its victims. Strangely, the Bawa has a peculiar method of spreading fear. After an encounter, it compels its victims to share their experience with others, warning that it will return if they remain silent. And this demand has contributed to the legend's impact on the collective psyche. In 2007, a series of sightings and attacks were reported to this creature, causing a wave of fear among the local population. Many men started staying awake at night. Some even slept in groups in order to help protect themselves from it. And we're closing out the list with the Wendigo. Wendigo is a creature from North American indigenous folklore. They're described as horrifying, emaciated beings with decaying skin stretched tightly over this skeletal frame. And their appearance alone is nightmarish enough, and it's just as horrifying as it looks, with an insatiable hunger for human flesh, showing no mercy to its victims. The legend says that those who taste human flesh may become possessed by the Wendigo spirit, transferring it into themselves. And this concept of a malevolent force taking over someone's body, turning them into something dark, driving them to become cannibals, a pretty unsettling idea. Wendigo stories are often linked to the harsh realities of surviving in the northern wilderness during brutal winters, where scarcity of food has been known to push people to extremes, and it's in these times of desperation where the Wendigo is said to emerge. And it's in these times of desperation where the Wendigo emerges, compelling people to take a bite out of their best friend or even their own family.
Number 5. Leviathan. Leviathan became a demon of darkness and chaos and a leader of hell mentioned in the book of Enoch. Leviathan is one of Lucifer's arms and one of the many faces of the devil in Christianity. He is also the representation of the sin envy. Leviathan is a tamer of beasts, a beast collector, and an excellent strategist. He has the power to summon hellish whales that are natural inhabitants of hell and use them in battle. Leviathan appears as a huge sea beast, a very powerful species of a sea serpent dragon. This form is so colossal that it's said to be capable of frightening the bravest of men and is capable of swallowing fishing boats and even ships. Its scales are several small teeth throughout its body, similar to a shark's body. Now, in his human form, Leviathan appears as a handsome young man in his late teens. Although the appearance is similar to a human, he has fish gills on his neck and his ears are pointed. He also has a small shark-like teeth that are hidden under a thin layer of skin in his mouth. Like his name suggests, he is a very jealous person, with Lucifer often being the target though. It should be noted that Leviathan's jealousy isn't limited to only him, so you should watch out. Number 4. Lucifer. Lucifer was one of the most beautiful and indescribable beings created by God, with his wisdom and beauty being described as perfect. However, despite being considered a perfect, beautiful, and glorious being by countless angels, Lucifer was extremely proud and rebelled against his father after refusing to bow down to Adam and Eve. Therefore, Lucifer is known as the first sinner, the devil, and the adversary. Now, Lucifer didn't create any angels, only God had that power, but Lucifer did trick some of them into rebelling against God and becoming his followers, claiming that he was more powerful than God and would take God's place as the ruler of the universe. They believed him, and since then Lucifer has used them to do his will. He's known for the deadly sin of pride, and he used his pride to persuade them. I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14. Lucifer also sends the worst people up to earth to wreak havoc and terrorize everyone, as well as tries to tempt non-sinners to the dark side, so be safe. Number 3. Abaddon. Abaddon is considered the ruler of all demons in the 7th layer of hell, violence, and also the commander of the locusts of Abaddon. Now, what are the locusts? Well, they're scorpion-tailed warhorses that have a man's face with lion's teeth. They are commanded to torment anyone for 5 months who does not have the seal of God on their forehead by using their scorpion-like tails. So, yeah. He rules them. He has eyes as black as night and a huge mouth with many sharp teeth like those of a great white shark. In addition, he wears black armor and his wings have even turned dark. Abaddon is sometimes referred or foreshadowed as death, as they both are neutral entities of two opposing forces. He is also considered both an angel and demon with neutral and at times lawful agents of both heaven and hell. It is unknown where his allegiance lies. He's often bringing judgment upon people in the name of God, implying that he works for the Almighty. That being said, Abaddon has also caused events that God would never have wanted to happen, let alone the fact that Abaddon helped Lucifer during the war in heaven. Seems like he liked to play both sides. It's also said during Judgment Day he will gather the souls of the damned and carry them down to the place of God's final judgment. Number 2. Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a demon who personifies and represents lust, the sexual sin related to adultery. He is the demon who exists as the arch-rival of the angel of chastity, Gabriel. Asmodeus is also referred to as one of the 7 princes of hell and represents one of the 7 deadly sins, being lust. Asmodeus is a demon of lust and is therefore responsible for twisting people's sexual desires. It is said that people who fall to Asmodeus' ways will be sentenced to an eternity in the 2nd level of hell. He is also a demon of lechery, jealousy, anger, and revenge. In hell, Asmodeus looks human, however he has stark black eyes and 2 rows of shark teeth sticking out of his mouth. In this form, Asmodeus has no hair on his head, but has a muscular appearance from the waist up and 2 bat wings protruding from his back. From the waist down, he has what looks like kangaroo legs and a long dragon's tail. His horrible appearance is capable of causing fear and repudiation in humans who fall into hell, and that's the demon's intention. And coming up at number 1 is Satan. Satan is a prominent demon in the hierarchy of hell. He is known for bringing evil and temptation, and is known as the deceiver who leads humanity astray. Satan is even able to take control of the life of a person in the stead of God, though only to an extent to what God allows. Satan would appear to those who are sinful, playing into their hearts and towing them into despair. He may either be depicted as a rebel to the will of God, or as one who tempts mankind to commit sin to show God that mankind can easily be led astray from him. He is described as the ruler of the demons and the god of this age. In Revelation, Satan appears as a great red dragon who is ultimately banished from heaven by Michael the archangel. Satan is mostly known as the devil, and although the book of Genesis does not mention him, he is often identified with the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Satan is also said to be associated with one of the 7 deadly sins, being wrath, and is one of the 7 princes of hell.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Bob Dylan. Not necessarily who I really expected to put on this list, but there was an interesting interview back in 2014 that made many people speculate that the musician might have actually sold his soul. In the interview, he was explaining that he owes his years of fame and success to a deal he made. The interviewer asked, "Why are you still out here?" To which Dylan replied, "It goes back to that destiny thing. I made a bargain with it. You know, long time ago, and I'm holding up my end." The interviewer, of course, had to follow up on that cryptic message, so he said, "What was your bargain?" And he replied, "To get where I am now." The interviewer asked, "Should I ask who you made the bargain with?" And he replied, "With the chief commander." The interviewer clarified, "On this earth?" To which he answered, "In this earth and in a world we can't see." I can totally see why some people decided to draw their own conclusions from this. I mean, it sounds like he's basically speaking in riddles, so while he doesn't outright say that he sold his soul, some believe that this is what he was trying to say in that interview. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mike Colter. You might know Mike Colter as he plays Luke Cage in the MCU, but what you might not know about the actor is a very ghostly encounter that he had. Back in 2019, Mike was on Kelly Clarkson's show, and while on the show, he had an eerie tale for the audience when he said, quote, "I'm from the South, and there's a lot of things that happened in the South that don't happen anywhere else." Of course, Kelly inquired further, and that is when the star revealed a reoccurring moment that he claims happened, quote, "night after night." His mother basically explained it to him as a spirit being attracted to his energy. He said, quote, "When I was a kid, I used to have this thing that was sitting on my chest when I would sleep, and it was keeping me from getting up, and I couldn't open my eyes, and I would struggle." I don't know about you guys, but that sounds absolutely horrifying. I know a couple demons that could match up with that. Maybe it's a sleep paralysis demon, who knows. In our number 3 spot today we have Vanessa Hudgins. Just last year, in April of 2022, Vanessa appeared on the Kelly Clarkson show. I guess everyone's just on the Kelly Clarkson show talking about their paranormal experience. And during this appearance, she spoke about having, quote, a lot of paranormal encounters over the years. She said, quote, I kind of shut it down for a while because the unknown is scary, but I recently was like, no, this is a gift and something that I have the ability to do, so I'm going to lean into it. Expanding on how she is leaning into these abilities, she explained that she had actually recently completed her first real paranormal investigation. Now we have Ed, Lorraine, and Vanessa. During this investigation, she said she met a very playful ghost at the site of a cemetery. I mean, I guess it's not like a malicious spirit. She said that she was able to speak to this ghost using a spirit box, and that after introducing herself, the ghost replied and repeated the names back to her. Maybe this year we'll see Vanessa diving even further into the paranormal, the occult, and all of these otherworldly beings. In our number 2 spot today we have Courtney Cox. Back in March 2022, former Friends star Courtney Cox shared a harrowing experience she had that led her to go as far as to sell her house. She said, quote, I didn't believe at first, but I lived in this house in Laurel Canyon, which is in LA, obviously, and it was Gypsy Rose Lee's house and Carole King's. She went on to say, quote, so Carole King came over to my house and she said that there had been a divorce that was really ugly and that there was a ghost in the house. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But other people would stay there with me, like friends of mine, and they said they felt an encounter with a woman who was sitting on the edge of the bed. Despite these tales from her friends and even doing an actual seance with Carole, Courtney still wasn't really a believer of the supernatural. This all did eventually change, however, and it happened when a UPS worker came to her house. Quote, I was at the house one day, not being a believer. The doorbell rang, it was a UPS guy or something, and I opened the door and he said, do you know this house is haunted? And I go, yeah, why? Why do you think that? And he goes, because there's someone standing behind you. And I was like, let's sell. She said she quickly put the house up for sale. She said she quickly put the house up for sale after that, and that she, quote, couldn't sleep there alone ever again. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Cynthia Rowley. So there was a show called Celebrity Ghost Stories, and in an episode, Cynthia Rowley showed up to share her haunting tale. The designer recalled a spooky tale that took place at her estate, which is located in Greenwich, Connecticut. She explained that there was a, quote, ghost-like feeling in the house, which certainly is an eerie feeling, but soon a feeling turned into something a little bit more tangible. Eventually, Cynthia began seeing a sort of apparition in the corner of a room in the home. This apparition appeared as a woman who was wearing a sort of scarf over her face. This is all chilling enough, but things only got worse when Cynthia had to escape a fire in her home. She did, thankfully, and was fine, but then the local fire chief told her something she hadn't previously known. The woman who once owned the home she now lived in was called the, quote, Diamond Match heiress who was badly burned in a blaze. Seems like Cynthia may have been haunted by the previous owner of the house, and not just in like a tacky decor kind of way, I mean like for real haunted.
Number 5. TikTok doctor. Once, a man who was pronounced dead by his doctor after being injured said that rather than seeing a bright light and the feeling of coming home, he instead saw hell itself and met the devil. A doctor took to TikTok to explain that he encountered a young man in his early 20s who had been stabbed in the heart after being involved in a deal that went wrong. Not willing to let the man die, medical staff took the victim into surgery, kept him from losing too much blood, and treated the wound in his heart. The doctor remembers the man waking up 4 hours later and crying, claiming that he went straight down to hell and looked straight in the eyes of the devil. The man said he could see the doctors working to save his life, and having never prayed before, gave it a try, at which point an angel pulled him back up out of hell. Remembering how clear the man had been, the doctor said it was the most amazing experience because he was legit. I mean, nobody makes up an experience like that. The last I heard, he's completely changed his life, he gave his life to God, and I still to this day, the look in his eyes when he woke up up, the terror, I'm absolutely convinced he did meet the devil. Number 4. Working for the devil. Gilles de Rais was originally hailed a hero of France for his role in the 100 Years' War, a time during which he served as a comrade in arms to Joan of Arc, but the nobleman Gilles de Rais lived a secret, gruesome second life where he enjoyed ending the lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. In September 1440, de Rais was arrested after an almost decade-long spree in which he may have ended the lives of over 140 victims. During his trial, both de Rais and several of his servants/accomplices confessed to their evil deeds. Besides ending people's lives, he also admitted to engaging in Satanism by reportedly summoning the devil and his demonic minions. While the nobleman refused to sell his soul, he offered the blood and organs of his victims in exchange for knowledge and power over the dark arts. Number 3. God wanted her to see hell. Josefa Menendez was a young Spanish sister who had a short religious life of great suffering and experienced many revelations throughout her life. More than once she was taken to hell to witness and feel the suffering firsthand. Sister Josefa was reluctant to write on the subject of hell, and did so only to conform to her Lord's wishes. She wrote about her experiences in her journal, and she described it as the greatest torment of hell, namely the soul's inability to love. She wrote, "One of these damned souls cried out, 'This is my torture, that I want to love and cannot. There is nothing left me but hatred and despair. If one of us could so much as make a single act of love, but we cannot, we live on hatred." As mentioned, she went to hell multiple times, but one time she saw the devil. She wrote, "Souls were crying out and the devil answered, 'Insinuate yourselves by including carelessness in them, but keep in the background so that you are not found out. Tempt these others into ambition, into self-interest, to acquiring wealth without working, whether it be lawful or not." That entry was from February 3rd, 1923. She visited hell many times after that, but didn't report on seeing the devil again. And that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 2. In a coma. Will Carroll is a drummer who has been in the band Death Angel since 2009 and has provided the drum tracks for their last 4 studio albums. After spending nearly 2 weeks in a coma fighting Will revealed that during his battle with the virus, he saw the afterlife, where he would be sent to hell and meet Satan. The illness left him in a critical state where he was put on a ventilator while lying unconscious in a California Pacific Medical Center hospital bed for 12 days before recovering. He said that the devil would punish him for the deadly sin of sloth. The musician said Satan would transform him into a creature similar to that of Star Wars' Jabba the Hutt, and that he would vomit blood until he ultimately had a heart attack. Will told the San Francisco Chronicle that what he went through allowed him to change some of his typical lifestyle habits, including his once heavy alcohol and illegal substance use. "I'm also going to listen to satanic metal though," he joked, but he later admitted that after beating COVID-19, he doesn't think Satan's quite as cool as he used to. And coming up at number 1, The Devil Made Me Do It. Sound familiar? It's because the third Conjuring movie has the same title. This film is inspired by the real events that took place with Arnie Johnson. Ed and Lorraine Warren were helping exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks had appeared on his neck afterwards. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. They did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. During his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Arnie then coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in one of David's exorcisms. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed. He would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, his and his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, so Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine Warren informed the Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went on to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and the devil made me do it. The jury deliberated for 15 hours over 3 days before convicting Ernie of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, though he only served deserved 5.
In our number 5 spot today we have Lilith. Lilith is a demon goddess who appears a lot in mythology. Her dark origins start in Sumerian and Babylonian demonology, and she is the picture of a beautiful maiden with a very dark spirit. Legend says once she chose a lover, she would never let him go and would give nothing in return. Some people believe that Lilith was actually the first wife of Adam and that the two were created equal, but Adam didn't like that she wasn't obedient to him, so he abandoned her, and this is when God made Eve. This is what is rumored to have turned Lilith into a snake, which then tempted Eve into the apple. After Adam and Eve were then banished from the Garden of Eden, Lilith turned into a demon goddess and vowed to get her revenge on all men. In our number 4 spot today we have the Jorogumo. This creature, according to lore, is said to be a yokai that is half woman, half spider. She has the ability to appear as a beautiful human in order to lure unsuspecting men so that she can devour them like a black widow. Legend has it that one day a young samurai encountered an alluringly gorgeous woman on the streets. Many people would have been fooled by her appearance, but the samurai was not so naive. He saw through the disguise and immediately drew his sword, but he was only able to injure her before she was able to scurry away. He followed the trail of scarlet that was left by her blood, and it led him to an old abandoned house. When he peered inside, he saw dozens of bodies that were bound in spider silk. In our number 3 spot today we have the demonic animal. One more story from the Warrens. This one came straight from Ed himself. He told this story when he was trying to set an example of how things of the occult and the supernatural certainly are not for amateurs or for the faint of heart. He used this story of a girl who was playing with a Ouija board. You know, how all good supernatural stories start. She asked for proof of a spirit presence and she got a lot more than she bargained for. Ed Warren said, quote, "She got this proof with 2 days and 2 nights of hell. Apparently it started off with a manifestation of sort of an animal form walking on her bed. This then turned physical, and whatever this entity was left her with bruises. It is said that thankfully the mother in the home saw what was happening and she took action. She not only prayed by the girl's bedside, but she also sprinkled holy water. There was a 2-day vigil in which everyone tried to rid the girl of this demonic presence that she had summoned, and thankfully it worked." In our number 2 spot today we have Tukolshi. This creature originated in South Africa and it appears in Zulu mythology. It is said that this creature is quite short but very frightening. What it lacks in height it makes up for in a vertical better than Michael Jordan in his prime. Legend has it that this creature likes to jump on people's chests at night while they are sleeping so that it can steal their breath away. Aside from the whole jumping thing, it is said that this creature is also quite fast, and one kind of random fact is that it apparently loves curdled milk, which is disgusting. So while he's stealing your breath, I guess you just have to sit there smelling his hot curdled milk breath. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. There is a way to protect yourself against him, and that is by putting your bed on high bricks. This is because if the bed is raised too high, then this malevolent being won't be able to just jump up on your chest to complete its breath-stealing work. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Hades. Hades is the king of the underworld and the god of the dead, and I'm not sure if it gets any darker than that. It was believed that just by speaking his name, he would have the power to bring you to the underworld, so people tried to avoid his name like it was Voldemort. Hades was sure to never let any souls that entered the underworld escape, and he would punish anyone who tried, or anyone who tried to save someone in the underworld. One of the darkest myths in reference to him is the time he kidnapped Persephone. He opened up the earth where she was picking flowers and kept her in the underworld. Persephone's mother Demeter was of course really unhappy about this and did everything that she could to get her back. Hades finally agreed to let her go, but of course there's always a twist with these guys. He gave her a pomegranate seed as a parting gift, which she ate. Little did she know, if you eat food from the underworld, it binds you to it, so now she is bound to Hades, and basically the story just ends off with her being allowed to live a few months of the year on Earth, but the rest of the time she was stuck in the underworld. So yeah, Hades is just out there kidnapping people, which is super uncool. Don't summon him with a Ouija board. Unless you want to get kidnapped.
Number 5. Candyman. Having his life ended for simply loving a white woman, Daniel Robital had an unjust price for his death of having his hand cut off, being covered in honey and having a hive set upon him, and then finally being set on fire after his torment was done. He was then summoned as an urban legend, taking on the form of pure malice, his name to become infamous in the town, killing any and all who invoke his name. According to this legend, if you look into a mirror and chant the name Candyman 5 times, he will appear behind you and kill you with his hook. For you see, the Candyman is a vicious killer with a bloody hook for a hand. He appears in the mirror covered in blood and bees and has nothing but death on his mind. If you summon him, you're just asking for a death sentence, okay? Just don't don't do it. Number 4. Paimon. If you've heard the name Paimon before, it's probably because this is the demon in Ari Aster's film Hereditary, but it's actually a real demon. Paimon is a spirit named in the early grimoires. Though there's some variation in his appearance, his grandeur is mentioned in all accounts. Paimon wears a woman's face but a man's form, regaled with fine jewelry and a golden crown. His voice is so unnaturally loud and authoritative that it hurts anyone who listens. To merely understand the demon, you must request he lower his voice. Preceding him is a host of spirits who appear as men playing loud fanfare with a diverse arrangement of horns, cymbals, and other musical instruments. Paimon is one of the greater kings of Hell, and like other kings, he travels with an entourage. When summoning Paimon, be aware that he travels with 2 lesser kings and 25 of the 200 spirit legions under his command. And to even reach Paimon, there may be a network of lesser demons who act as intermediaries between you and Paimon. You may even have to appeal and compel demons just to navigate a path to find King Paimon, so it's just difficult overall. Number 3. Skinwalker. Okay, so not necessarily a demon, but hear me out. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. According to some traditions, skinwalkers were once the healers and medicine men who were corrupt by their own power and turned to evil. By draping the hide of a certain animal over themselves, the witch takes on the form and traits of that animal. In doing so, the witch gains the animal's strength, speed, and endurance. They sometimes transform themselves into animals simply for the purpose of traversing great distances quickly. They may also transform in order to wreak havoc on others, as their identity will be hidden and they'll be able to escape quickly if necessary. They curse people and cause great suffering and death, one Navajo writer explained. At night, their eyes grow like hot coals. It's said if you see the face of a skinwalker, they have to kill you. If you see one and know who it is, they will die. If you see them and you don't know them, they have to kill you in order to keep you from finding out who they are. Skinwalkers are also telepathically linked to each other, enhancing their coordination during hunts and fights, but allowing little to no privacy at any time. Skinwalkers can read other humans' minds and control them, and skinwalkers in 2 different groups can communicate telepathically and are able to choose which thoughts they share. They can also copy animal or human voices to lure victims to them to feed on. They generally copy the sound of a human that is in need of help, so don't get tricked. Number 2. The Midnight Man. I'm not gonna lie, this is a cool sounding name, but whatever you do, don't summon him. I mean, can you think of a better way to spend an evening than inviting a ghostly spirit into your home and having him chase you around in the darkness for over 3 hours while you avoid him? Yeah. Okay, well, this game is called the Midnight Game, and the ritual begins with you pricking yourself to draw blood. It's basically hide and seek, and once you perform the needed steps, open your door and let the Midnight Man in. The goal of the game is to avoid meeting the Midnight Man in the dark. Continually moving about your home will make it more difficult for him to find you, and should you stop moving at any point, he will catch you. Accounts differ as to what happens to the players caught by the Midnight Man. Some claim he will induce a hallucination of your worst fear until the end of the game. Others claim he'll remove your organs one by one. Both outcomes are to be avoided at all costs. At 3:33 a.m., the Midnight Man will leave your home, and then you can safely end the game and be free of him. And coming in at number 1 is Bloody Mary. The roots of the mirror game known as Bloody Mary stretch back to a folk tradition practiced by young people in the 19th century. And as for who Bloody Mary is, well, that changes depending on who you're talking to. Some say she's Mary Worth, who may have been either a Puritan woman who was tried and executed for witchcraft, or a woman who was killed in a car crash. Some say she's the vengeful spirit of a mother who lost her child, and still others say she's Mary Tudor, the Queen of England who reigned from 1553 to 1558 and became known as Bloody Mary for the executions she carried out. In the ritual of today, Bloody Mary allegedly appears to individuals or groups who repeatedly chant her name into a mirror placed in a dimly lit or candlelit room. The Bloody Mary apparition allegedly appears as a corpse, witch, or ghost that can be friendly or evil, and is sometimes seen covered in blood, hence the name. The lore surrounding the ritual states that participants may endure the apparition screaming at them, cursing at them, strangling them, stealing their soul, drinking their blood, or scratching their eyes out. Which is so kind of her, eh? Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 terrifying demons in North America you should never summon. Have you ever summoned a demon? Let us know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe while you're down there. I'm your host Emily, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. We found some unexplained encounters with the unknown that you need to know about. Sometimes we don't know what are behind these mysterious forces, and the answer ends up always being aliens. Click the video now to find out more.